two. Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Reed. Great to be talking some comics tonight.
Talking comics. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Ultimate comic books, the Ultimate line from Marvel, and the rumored, I think it's called Absolute or DC All In, that's rumored to be coming from DC with Scott Snyder. And so rather than like a full reboot or anything like that, and I'm sure most people have seen our videos on this channel, we've talked about Ultimate Black Panther. We kind of did a rundown of those first two. We're waiting for Ultimate Spider-Man 4, which comes out this week, and then we're going to do kind of a mega review of the first story arc of it and kind of go through the first 4 issues and give our thoughts on that. So that'll probably be coming at the end of next week. But with these universes, while Mike and I have both enjoyed Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate Spider-Man, I think Ultimate X-Men is a little mixed. I'll probably give that another issue or two. But we wanted to talk about, are these Ultimate lines actually a good idea? And that, well, I think me and you would both agree that the quality of these books is fantastic. And we're hopeful that DC can get some good books as well. Is it kind of diluting the overall brand? Like, would we rather just see this stuff be in the main continuity and kind of this approach? So Mike, I'll kind of go to you on this first form. I share my thoughts on it. I know you and I have talked about, Spider-Man and Black Panther are both characters we're both fans of. But it is a little weird that the Ultimate line is so good, and then if you just go pick up the actual standard issue of Black Panther or Amazing Spider-Man, it seems to be quite a dip in quality.
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. For a fan like me who hasn't, really bought a Spider-Man comic in a long time, for myself, of course, we subscribe and Jackson gets Spider-Man comics. But he usually waits for the trades to come out with a whole run in it.
Yeah.
A monthly Spider-Man title has not been on my pull list for quite a while, even for Jackson. Same with X-Men. I love the X-Men, but we haven't been picking up the individual issues. And from what I understand, Black Panther just, has off and on runs where he's not continuously published. Is that right with Black Panther?
It is. I mean, I'll be honest, I was buying Black Panther monthly for a good decade, and then he had gone away for a while when the movie relaunched, when it came out. It was 2017, 2018. They did a new #1 for him. That series was not very good. That lasted, I want to say, 25 issues. Then they did the whole new #1 thing, and that lasted for a while. Then there was a little bit of break in publishing. After that, they gave a guy named John Ridley. I think he did like 18 issues. And then there was a little bit of break in publishing. And then I think they're ending the new one that's been going the last year after 12 issues. So he kind of is published continually, but there's always relaunches. I mean, inside of since 2017, 2018, he's on his 3rd or 4th creative team.
It's just kind of sad to see such an iconic character not really have the legs that the other characters do. Like he should have just, I don't know. I'm old school.
Well, I think the thing is, it's not even that he doesn't have the legs in terms of sales. It's really just the writers driving the sales away. And that, for me, Black Panther was a comic book I pretty much always picked up because he's very close to Batman. And I basically, if you're superheroes anywhere close to like that Batman range, I'm going to be interested in the character. And the books were just kind of unreadable at a certain point. And then it was like the writers all kind of had a grudge against T'Challa. And that the book kind of existed to raise up the Dora Milaje and Shuri and different characters. So
I think this Ultimate run is kind of like they're kind of trying to hit it from both ends. Number one, I think the big two realize that they need to do rebranding, relaunching, and they're afraid to go away from their mainstay because all these characters, X-Men, all these titles, they have dedicated fans that subscribe every month. You don't want to drive away that customer by taking a chance at revamping everything. So we're going to continue the line as it is, but we're going to try something new. And it's mostly been a hit for Marvel.
Marvel.
I love Ultimate Black Panther. I love Ultimate Spider-Man. I'm really excited to read them. I can't wait till they come out. And X-Men, not so much. I didn't put it on my pull list.
Yeah,
And
I
you
think you
know,
can save yourself some money on the.
yeah, you know, we talked about this the other day too. It's like I really, for an old fan like me to be able to pick up something like First Night from
Yeah,
DC and get back into Batman because I love Batman. Spider-Man, I love Spider-Man, so let's check out the Ultimate. I love where the Ultimate is going, and Black Panther. I love Black Panther, so it's a win-win for me. It's a good jumping on point for me. Now, am I going to go back and now, put Amazing Spider-Man back on my pull list? No, I won't.
yeah,
Um,
I think that.
but but I think DC's probably thinking the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, we've just wrecked continuity and we've gone universe crazy. And Marvel's in the same boat. There's so many universes. There's so many. It's so diluted. And we talk about this all the time. Let's boil it back down, which is what these Ultimate books do. If DC can do something like that, they'll probably pick up a lot of, you know,
Yeah, I
uh,
think if DC came out and hey, we're doing Ultimate Superman, Ultimate Batman, right? I know they wouldn't use that branding, but so to speak. I think that yeah, those would be sales wise huge. I think Ultimate Wonder Woman, right? I can only imagine what those three would do. I think while I really enjoy the Ultimate books, and I'll keep picking them up because they're high quality, it's a half measure. It's a half measure, and it makes me mad in that like, look, I'm one of the suckers who buys Amazing Spider-Man still.
yeah,
In the next couple of issues, and I don't know what it will take for me to drop Amazing Spider-Man, and it's literally been on my pull list as long as I've been able to buy comic books. But like in a few issues, they're doing a second time in 20 issues that Peter Parker will be possessed as the Spider Goblin and will be like basically the Green Goblin's sins are rested upon Peter and he loses. And this literally happened in issue 35, 36, and it's going to happen again in issue 50 through 53. Amazing Spider-Man had earlier this year where Kamala Khan died in the comic book and then was resurrected before that comic was even published. There was the announced resurrection of it. What makes me mad is when I pick up Ultimate Spider-Man, I'm reading great storytelling. I'm reading Jonathan Hickman with art from Marco Cicchetto. It's great. It's well thought out. It's got him married to Mary Jane. And then I go pick up the Amazing Spider-Man comic book. And it seems like I am reading the knockoff, like store brand version of Spider-Man compared to Ultimate Spider-Man.
the great value version.
Yeah, it's and look, there's nothing wrong with the great value product. I love Amazing Spider-Man, great. But the other thing is Amazing Spider-Man's also just as expensive. So this is Ultimate Spider-Man's, the Coca-Cola, and the Sam's Club Cola is the Amazing Spider-Man, but they cost the same price.
Yeah,
That's the big issue is, and Amazing Spider-Man releases twice as often. And so I think it's a half measure in terms of look, I love Spider-Man as a character, but I read Ultimate Spider-Man, I mean, this is Peter Parker. I read Amazing Spider-Man, it's like, what is this book doing? And I think that's the problem is it starts when the Ultimate comics get, and I think this is the plan for DC too, is DC seems like they're going to be putting top, because I know we've heard Scott Snyder, we've heard some other top guys are going to be on
Mark
the book.
Wade.
Yeah, Mark Wade's rumored, right? It's funny. It's like, okay, we're putting the top tier talent on the Ultimate Universe or the Absolute Universe, whatever DC is going to have. And yet the mainline book is still riding along with guys who aren't as big a name and not, let's face it, not as the same talent wise. And so it's like, why would you make the decision to make Amazing Spider-Man your cornerstone book, the book that like Marvel's success rests on? Why would you let that be the discount book? And that's the part where it just drives me crazy.
I think, I think it's because they've gotten so far away from the formula And they're, at least for DC, it seems like sometimes they're just grasping at straws when they're throwing some of these stories together. And I think the major talent, is being wooed away by the indies. And somebody like Mark Waid, who's been with DC for decades, is probably like, hey guys, I'd love to write a new Superman, Batman, or Flash story, but I can't work with where
Well,
everything's
that's
at
and
right now.
that's largely what Wade's doing with like World's Finest, which is the best book DC publishes. Is that World's Finest book? It's set in the past, and it's largely just Mark Waid gets to blaze his own trail and kind of. And I think that's what it is. I think makes me mad about the Ultimate line, and I'll just call it Ultimate line for both for Marvel and DC, is it feels like it's a self admittance from them of like, oh man, we've screwed up continuity. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
yeah,
And so what this reminds me of, and I'll use a sports analogy again, which people probably get tired of, but like what Marvel and DC seem to do, a writer will come in and mess something up. And then what they do is they seem to hire someone else who is also part of the problem and fix it.
yeah,
Right. So like my favorite baseball team, this breaks my heart because they're so bad. The White Sox. I am a diehard White Sox.
yeah.
The White Sox last year had an awful season. Horrible. I mean, everything fell apart. They lost 100 plus games. They fired the general manager who put together that roster. The guy they promoted to become the new general manager was his protege. It's like, wait a second. The guy who messed all this up is the mentor of the guy we're hiring to come in and that does not work. And
That's a head scratcher.
and the White Sox, surprise, surprise, are an absolute disaster again. And the whole thing is that's kind of what seems to happen on Marvel and DC. Is you have like, oh man, this person really wrecked continuity. Well, let's get his understudy to come in and write the book, or someone else who was part of the writers' room on it. And so I think what this ultimate lines are an admittance of is I think it is Marvel and DC going, you know what, man, the big names don't want to be saddled with all the bad decisions and continuity that we've let these writers run amok with in the last 20 years. And so I think the
Yep,
reason you see Jonathan Hickman writing Ultimate Spider-Man, part of it has got to be, hey man, I get to blaze my own trail.
I
It's the
know.
closest to writing an indie book, but having Spider-Man that anybody's going to get. And it's the same for
It's
Brian
really
with
cool. It's really cool the story he's telling
no,
in
it's the same with Brian
Spider-Man.
Hill, who's doing such a good job on Black Panther, and that like
Yeah.
all this crap that you probably don't want. I mean, and like Black Panther's a great example, and that like in the last couple years, he went from being the king to where like there was a political unrest thing, so we had to remove him as a king because that's a monarchy, and it had to become democratic, and they had to have like votes and elections to determine who was going to rule Wakanda, and then the people got mad at T'Challa for that. And then, like, T'Challa had spies around the world to protect Wakandan interests and they went bad. So of course, instead of the spies being the bad guy, everyone got mad at T'Challa for having spies. And like largely Black Panther's book the last 5 years, they've taken away him being the king. They've had him exiled. His people no longer like him. His sister has gone from this really cool supportive character to basically exists to trash talk him. The Dora Milaje like became like
It's terrible.
it's like you took all these things away. And so, yeah, if I'm the guy writing Black Panther, I'm like, look, I love T'Challa, man. I don't want to carry on from that crap. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? And so
Give
I
me
get
a blank slate.
if you're Brian Hill, you get to come in. Hey, man, he's the king. Everything's good. I get to put the pieces on the chessboard as I want. And so we've talked about whether they should reboot or not. I think these Ultimate Universes, I think it's admittance from them that they know it too. And to be honest, it's a half meant just go with it. Just trigger the reboot on all of it.
I
And
think so. I
it
think
kills me that like this is a great Black Panther story. But if I go pick up the actual comic, the Black Panther that counts in continuity with the legacy numbering, it's discount. It's not as good. And it's like I think they just
that
gotta go for it.
that's heartbreaking. I think this is a test run at ripping off the Band-Aid. Like they're carefully pulling off the first half of the Band-Aid, and then the second half will just be rip it off, and we're just gonna throw away all the crappy continuity for the last 15 years and just get back to basics again. I mean,
No, I think the heartbreaking thing for me with DC and Marvel on not heartbreaking, that's an over exaggeration. Um, the disappointing part is as a guy who still reads from the big two mainly, what kills me is you'll see some people come in and they will really bust their butt to put together a great run. And then all the little pieces around it stink. And it's like it almost washes down the great work someone's doing. Like one story, and I know this was not the most popular story with everybody, but I was 100% invested in it and thought it was great. Chip Zdarsky a couple years ago was writing a great Daredevil run, and I would recommend anybody who likes Daredevil give Chip Zdarsky's run a read if you haven't. But he did this great event called, I think it was called Devil's Reign or something like that. I'm trying to remember. It was a crossover. It was Daredevil ended for 6 months about, and there was a main huge event, which basically was Wilson Fisk was the mayor, and then Daredevil came in and was like, nah, it's time to take him down because Fisk had put this anti-vigilante act in. It's a really good story, very good run. At the end, where I give Zdarsky a ton of credit in that story, at the end, it put things in a really interesting place. And that like Luke Cage became the mayor of New York City. Vigilantes were still outlawed. The Thunderbolts became like the official police force, like superhero approved force for New York. And there was some really cool stuff around them. Like, man, we're getting some cool momentum. We're getting some things that actually work. But they did nothing with it. No, like they all the other pieces around that event. Everyone's like, man, all this great work by Zdarsky, all this great storytelling, all the great putting. There was a good Thunderbolts run after that too. They had Hawkeye leading the team that was really well done and kind of had them having to act more like police. And I think it was all really really good. I think Jim Zub was the writer on that one. Just surprise, good comic from Jim Zub. Like he does Conan and does that. Like it was all really good. And then it just kind of went nowhere. I was like, wait, these guys who are writing this story are busting their butt. And then,
That's your A list.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, the rest of the Marvel universe, though, was like in complete disarray.
And
And that's disappointing.
That's what kind of like, in the old days, when people swapped around,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of built off their predecessors, and they respected what they had brought to the table and where the character was at, and they continued on, as best they could.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it feels like, you get a fresh writer in, they're like, oh no, I got better ideas than Chip Zdarsky, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, you got to prove it.
And I think the thing is, what kind of stinks is like, it kind of seems like the folks who are so, and that's just one small, and again, I may be a bigger fan of those than other people, but like, it felt like, hey, we did this major initiative to launch this stuff. We're setting these pieces up. And then it kind of just felt like the rest of the line was like, yeah, no, we're not really dealing with that. Like we're not.
Yeah.
That's on its own, man. We're not. It didn't seem to have a larger impact on the rest. And I think that's the thing is when I read the big two, the hardest part for me is like I'll read a few comic books and it's like, man, again, sports analogy. It reminds me of like when you see a bad team, but there's like three players who are giving it their all and trying, and like the rest of the team just keeps letting them down. And
Yeah.
I see this a lot with Marvel and DC, where you a couple of books and it's like, man, that guy is knocking it out of the park. But the rest of the line around them is gone there. And I think that's why these ultimate ones are so successful in that like three books, like to keep the main universe, right? Right now, if you want to follow the Ultimate Universe by Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate Spider-Man, and you're kind of caught up on everything. And I think,
Yeah. That's why I'm loving it, because I got two of my favorite, Marvel characters.
they're kind of back in a place where you can
When I can
read
jump
them.
in and enjoy a good Spider-Man story, maybe they'll do Ultimate Thor.
No,
Cross your fingers.
it's I know he's gonna. Well, they're doing the Ultimates, which is basically the Avengers, so that will have Thor in it. I think the roster is. Let me try to find the roster of that, but it's gonna be Captain America, Thor. I think that's the Ultimate Thor. So they'll have him.
Oh,
That was I think it was Ultimate Universe #1. That was a few months back, but that's the Thor who'll be showing up. No, and that's the thing is like, look, if they keep doing these Ultimate Universe ones, and I know Marvel did the original Ultimate Spider-Man was like early 2000s, late 90s ish. And those were good, but like what I will only say that Ultimate Universe used to be is there was a huge distinction, right? In that like Peter was 15 again in that Ultimate Universe, right? There was a little bit difference in there. What kills me now is like Peter in the main continuity is kind of almost the same age as Peter in the Ultimate Universe. It's just they like Peter was about 30-ish is what they sort of make him. And I think that's confirmed because even in the recent Spider-Man comics, they had ready to go to college, and it's like, man, I feel so old. I'm way too old to be here on these people. So like Peter's probably 30. And it's like
yeah.
in the comic book here, he's probably like 35.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you're basically just having this Peter is married with kids and stable. Our main Amazing Spider-Man one is an unemployed guy who can't get a girlfriend, won't get a stable dating life. Mary Jane dumped him, and he's possessed by the Green Goblin. It's like, geez, do I want to read the story where Peter is a good father, husband, and trying to be a good superhero? Or do I want to read the loser, slacker, can't get anything right? Mary Jane
And
left
now
another
he's a
guy
bad guy.
possessed by the Green Goblin Spider-Man. And it's like
Yeah. I'm
I
not buying it. So, well, if
and
Mark
I just
Waid's
I
on,
hope that's not what happens with DC, and that like I would really hate if like what make me really mad is if I pick up this Ultimate DC line and it's like Batman is married to Catwoman in this continuity. You're basically like undoing
as
the
kids,
decision you made.
a little,
If they basically do the like, hey, what if Tom King had actually been allowed to get him married kind of thing and run with that, that's gonna make me really mad. And that
they had a little litter of bat kittens.
I just I think that's the thing is these ultimate lines are a good idea, I think. But I do
I
think
think so. And I think if they put Mark Waid on it, it's got a good shot.
yeah.
I'm an ultimate Mark Waid fan. I believe in him.
Oh, Mark Waid's a great writer. He
He can
he
save
does
the
so
day.
many good books. Um and he's done so well in so many characters. I think that's the other thing where he's impressive. But um we'll see. I love the Ultimate Universe. I'm kind of two minds in it. I love that it exists, but I hate that it exists. And that I absolutely love it as a reader that I get to pick it up. At the same time, I gotta admit, it makes me mad every time I read Ultimate Spider-Man or Ultimate Black Panther. I'm like, why is the main line so much worse? This should be the offshoot book that's not as good. And
Well,
instead, the mainline one that if you've got the long box of the comics that you're adding the next issue to, is the one that seems to not get as much attention. And it seems to have worked too. I mean, these Ultimate comics are all selling well. I mean,
well, I
that's
think
a huge
I think
plus.
if it works, they may have the courage that they need to go. Yeah, we're just going to reset everything and go for it. And DC is more likely to do that than Marvel, and so it could be a seismic shift. And
Yeah,
that starts October, November, right? For DC.
supposedly in there.
All
Uh,
right.
but yeah, no, it's crazy. And like weirdest thing closing this out. If they told me tomorrow we're ending Amazing Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man is the only Spider-Man book going forward, I actually would be quite happy with that.
I
And
would too.
that should not be the case. But
I
it
know.
seems to be where we are. Let us know what you guys think below. What do you think of these Ultimate Universes? Do you think it's kind of a half measure? Do you think it's a good thing? Would you rather see them just go for a total reboot, especially if both of the big two are going to be doing it? Or am I wrong on something here? Is it good for these continuities to be separate? I will never pretend to be the expert on these things, right? I'm just one guy spouting it, or two, we're just two guys giving our opinions on things.
Two
So
guys with a stack of comics back there.
let us know what you think below. As always, we appreciate everybody who watches. We always love seeing comments. So if you do see anything, whether you agree with us or disagree with us, we really love seeing any opinions down below. Again, we hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.